The most important lesson I've learned over the years is to surround myself with people smarter than me who like to do things and are good at things that I'm not, and give them the tools they need to succeed and get out of their way.
You're listening to The Uncertainty Edge, the show about the art and science of moving forward when the path isn't clear. I'm your host, Sam Sivarajan. Each episode, I sit down with leaders, advisors, and thinkers to explore how they navigate uncertainty, make better decisions, and stay focused in a world that rarely cooperates. Together, we'll look for the clarity hidden inside uncertainty. Hi everyone, I'm Sam Sivarajan, and welcome to the Uncertainty Edge. Today, I'm joined by Eric Brotman, founder and outgoing CEO of BFG Financial Advisors. After more than 30 years building a thriving wealth management practice, Eric is executing a meticulously planned internal succession, stepping into a chairman and growth officer role while his team takes over the reins. Eric is also an author, speaker, and consultant who helps financial advisors navigate succession planning and career transitions. His philosophy? Don't retire, graduate to the next level. Get ready for a stimulating conversation about planning for uncertainty, building from strength to wisdom, and leveling up instead of stepping back. Eric, welcome to the show.
Sam, it's great to be here. That might be the best intro I've ever received, so I appreciate it. I might have to travel with you.
Well, that's fine. I'll take royalties.
There you go. There you go.
Eric, you've spent, as I said in the intro, you've spent over 30 years building BFG Financial Advisors, and at the height of its success, you're thinking about stepping down as CEO to focus on growth and consulting. Can you walk us through what led to this decision and how you've been preparing for this transition?
Absolutely. And I think it begins with understanding and knowing ourselves. I mean, for me to realize that the entrepreneur and the visionary that I was to create a startup and build infrastructure and create what we've built is a completely different skill set than to manage 25 folks and multiple office spaces and clients all over the country. So I think my skill set is that of a true entrepreneur, somebody who wants to innovate. And right now, I felt like the company was ready for a different type of leader, a more transitional and less transformational leader. And so it was time for me to begin to execute. And it just made sense. I mean, I think it's better to go out on top than it is to wait until you're waning in some way and have to do that too.
Well, I think that's very powerful what you've said. And I want to unpack that a bit. I've seen in my experience the startup, in whether in tech or whatever, the type of mindset, the drive, the energy, the focus, the skill set that you need when you're a startup or a very small company is very different than, as you say, when you're running a much larger organization. And most people, and this is no criticism, most people's skill set doesn't grow sufficiently enough to handle that later version of the company. But what you hit on, to me, Eric, is quite powerful. There's a degree of humility and self-awareness that you're displaying here about acknowledging that what your company needs today is perhaps not what it needed 30 years ago, but also what you're not able to give today from a skill set. But I suspect, and I'd love for your take on it, is I also suspect from an energy, from a desire, from a drive, from a willingness to put the effort in. And again, not taking anything away from anybody, but there's a difference between energy and drive when you're 22 and with nothing in the bank, and when you're much older with less energy, but also a lot more in the bank.
Well, it's true, and hunger does beget energy and ferociousness, right? I think at the end of the day, I still have plenty of gas in the tank. I'm leaving the CEO suite 15, 20 years earlier than many of my peers, and doing that on purpose. While I still do have some drive and some energy and some enthusiasm, but to your point, once there's money in the bank, now it's about, is it bringing me joy and fulfillment, and am I making a difference? And so to me, it's become more of if it ain't fun, I'm not doing it. And I know that sounds a little selfish, but I think first to be selfless and to allow people the opportunity to grow does allow me to decide, sort of pick my assignments and pick my spots a little more than when you're a startup and you have to do everything. I mean, I had to be the IT department, and that's a nightmare for anyone. So I had to do all the things and shouldn't have been.
When you say, and perhaps it is a sign of our vintage, if I may say that, that when you said that perhaps it's selfish of me to do that, I think that's a very common mindset of for advisors or others that are, 30 plus years of experience in this. And I understand it because I live it as well. I go through this, and I think it's how we were raised and the socialization that we went through. But I actually think the way that you put it, it is probably the least selfish thing to do whatsoever. I mean, the selfish thing in some ways, to argue it, would be to stay coasting along. You're good at what you're doing, and you're depriving others of the opportunity to kind
Mm.
of step up and build their skills, build their net worth. And for you to say, I'm not riding off into the sunset or going to go lie on a beach sipping margaritas all day long. I'm still going to work. I'm still going to focus, but I'm going to do it on the things where I can add value, and to be honest, which energizes me the most. I think your point is right. I think there is a perception, most of all from ourselves internally, but even perhaps our peer groups, that looks like it's being selfish, where I would argue that it's the furthest thing from being selfish.
Well, what a great paradox. I mean, we're starting to sound like Ayn Rand. There's ways in which selfishness is virtuous, right? And this is one of them, because by my picking and choosing my assignments, for lack of a more elegant term, I'm also allowing others to build their skill set, to your point, and also to build their own success and their own net worth, and to create those opportunities. And I want to be the one called in when there's something major, a major opportunity or a major challenge, a major tragedy, a
Hmm.
major event
Hmm.
in any client's life. And we'll still be able to do that. What I won't be doing is some of the, I dare say, more routine aspects of annual strategy, which quite frankly is the next logical growth point for most of the advisors in our firm. And so I do think it is paradoxical. It allows them to grow, which of course is selfless, but it also allows me to stay energized and to be doing the things that fill my tank rather than draining my battery.
It's a win-win in my books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what is ironic, and you and I talked about this before, is that succession planning is one of those things that we as advisors tell our clients to do, but we often
Yep.
don't do it ourselves. So this is the old adage about the shoemaker's children not having any shoes. You started selling equity internally 15 years ago, and now you have 8 shareholders. I'd love to learn about the lessons that you've learned over this process about structuring internal succession, and what mistakes or perhaps whiffs or do-overs did you encounter along the way?
Well, the whiffs that I encountered were many years ago when I was the number two in a different firm and was working toward getting equity, and the carrot kept going around the track faster and it never happened, which I think is a very common experience for a lot of sort of
Yes.
generation two folks in every industry. And it wasn't malicious. It just didn't work out for a variety of reasons. So I think the whiffs, I had experienced them. And so I wanted to create a different path for people coming after me, because there really wasn't a blueprint for this. And so I did start selling stock when I was in my 30s, and people thought I was nuts. They're like, "What are you doing?"
Hmm.
It's like a farmer selling the watermelon before it's ripe on the vine. You're not getting full price for it. But on the other hand, if you wait until it's full size and full price and somebody doesn't buy it, it's going to rot on the vine. So knowing that you have buyers in the hopper, I think, is a really smart thing to do. Equity is never given. It's always sold or bought. And being a shareholder in our firm is not a job. It's an investment. And so it's not something that comes with a different title or a different role or a different salary structure. It is merely having the opportunity to buy a seat on the bus and to be part of the team moving forward. And financial advisory firms are incredibly valuable. There's an unbelievable amount of equity built up because of the nature of the business, because of the recurring and growing often revenue. So stock becomes extremely expensive. And if you wait long enough, If you're 60 or 65 when you start thinking about succession and you've built something truly massive, the only option is going to be private equity. And while there's nothing wrong with selling to private equity, it's a wonderful way to monetize. It's not usually great for the people in the firm other than the primary owners. I have private equity firms calling me constantly saying, would you sell? Would you sell? And I could absolutely sell at a top dollar right now. But the other shareholders in the firm who would make a few dollars on the deal, it wouldn't work out for them. And so I know I'm leaving some money on the table, but I'm able to do it on my terms. I'm able to self-select the folks who are joining this team. I'm able to be partners with them for what I hope will be 20 years by the time all said and done, maybe longer in some cases. And the firm will outlive me. It'll outlive my career, but it may outlive my life. So we don't have to become part of some large entity in order to have a successful transition financially. And for the shareholders in the firm who own anywhere from 2% to sometimes 20%, anyone who owns that has a different sense of not only pride, but also responsibility as a leader, as a role model, as someone who has a vested interest. And we're all on the same team. I mean, financial advisory firms, Sam, usually have competition within their walls. We have high fives in our hallway. And it's a much better culture. It's a much better fit for the right person. Some people like to have it themselves, own it themselves, run it themselves, and they'll have underlings.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it's almost what it's like. And that's not the organization that I wanted to create.
There's so many wonderful nuggets in there, Eric. I love the analogy about the watermelon rotting on the vine. And I think that is such a great metaphor. I do think, to your point, there's always this idea, it's not malicious, but this idea that I'm going to test out my people a bit more. I'm going to make sure they're right. And when they're ready and when I'm ready, somewhere, someday, I'm going to hand over equity. In theory, that can work. In practice, what happens is, like your first experience, as you said, when you were at another firm, that the person that you think is your successor gets tired of waiting, gets tired of having no movement forward, and decides to look elsewhere. And you've just lost 5, 10, 15 potential years of somebody that might have been the right person, but you were too slow to pull the trigger, right? And I think to your point, there's always, in my M&A days, I always used to say to business owners, there's different things that you're trying to maximize. One is price. The other is retention of your key staff, is the retention of your business, the retention of your clients. And I always used to tell our investment banking clients that there is a trade-off to be made here. My job isn't to tell you which way to make the trade-offs, but it is to tell you that is going to determine the type of deals we look for and the type of deals that we close. And to your point, you seem to have understood and made that trade-off very explicitly to say, I'm okay leaving money on the table. If
Yes.
it means that I get to work with the people that I want to work with, if it means I get to serve the people I want to serve in the way that I want to. And look, there's something to me that makes total sense. And I think your objective of this firm outliving your employment with the firm, but perhaps even your life, I think that's a valid goal. And the way that you've structured it, there's no guarantees, but you've maximized the likelihood that that's going to happen, right? And I think it's a great lesson that you're imparting to our listeners, that it's very important to understand to yourself, what are the key drivers for you in terms of succession planning? Is it maximizing price? Is it keeping the business? Is it keeping the clients? What have you, et cetera. But I think recognizing that there's going to be a trade-off, whatever you choose, and making that trade-off explicitly instead of having it made for you.
Well, and having your eyes open, having all the information or as much of the information as you can reasonably expect to have. None of us know how things are going to work out, but to have enough education and enough guidance from someone or a group of someone's who can help facilitate that and help walk you through it. The challenge with M&A in general is that most of the time, the person you're talking to is the would-be buyer.
Right.
And so they have an inherent conflict of interest. Even if you're best pals from your childhood, you're still on opposite sides of a very large financial deal. It's still a business deal. And that's not an excuse to hurt one another, but it does mean you have different goals and objectives. And if you can find a way to do it, that's great. But there's a defined conflict of interest when the person advising you is also the person trying to acquire you.
100%.
So I think it's what's nice is that by doing this internally, I can do this in several tranches over what I think could be another truly 20 years. And it allows me to maintain my individuality, my purpose, my professionalism, the joy I have for the industry, the people we serve, the families we work with. All of those things can stay in place. But my identity doesn't have to be tied to a title, and it doesn't have to be tied to a role. My,
Or a stake, or a particular stake in the company, right? It doesn't,
absolutely,
you don't have to
absolutely.
have an X% share or so.
Correct. And the fact is, as we speak, January 1 of 2026, when I do step down as CEO, I will own about 56% of the firm, which sounds like, oh yeah, you're still over 50%. You can do what you want. That's simply not true. We've
Mm.
we've structured it so that decisions require 70, 80, or even 90% of the votes for major decisions. And to our credit and our team's credit, in the 15 years that it's been more than just me, we've never had a vote. Not in 15 years did we have a dialogue or debate that we couldn't solve and required votes. It's never happened. That doesn't mean it won't. The day may come. But for right now, there is protection for the minority shareholders from me. I can't run the steamroller, but there's also protection for me from them. They can't hold up. One or two of them can't necessarily hold up a terrific deal that comes down the way. So we've really balanced out the risk and the reward so that it's incredibly fair. And fair is a word that gets tossed around way too much because everybody's got a definition for what's fair, and it might feel
Right.
more fair to you than it feels to me. But it's very transparent. Let's use that instead of fair. It's incredibly transparent, and it's been designed to be neutral as best as we could.
That's great. Now, you talked about anticipating and managing risks, and I think that's obviously a very, very key component in any successful succession plan. One of the biggest uncertainties in such a plan is losing a key person, whether to another opportunity, illness, or the proverbial bus that goes around hitting random people.
Right.
And you and I am sure have both seen situations. I know offhand about 2 or 3 situations where an advisor had invested everything in a successor that they brought in, and the idea was that in a defined period of time that successor was going to take over the practice, say 5 years, and in 4.5 years the person decides that for family reasons, personal reasons, professional reasons, what have you, that they're leaving the practice to go do something else. And at that point, you've lost 4.5 years as if you're the person planning that succession. How can you walk us through how you've structured your succession plan to mitigate this risk? And what would happen, for argument's sake, if one of your designated successors left unexpectedly?
Well, we have had shareholders leave the firm before. So I can speak to that. And we do have an exit opportunity for folks. And one of the triggers is retirement, but one of them is also I've decided to do something different for a living. And there is a discount on the sell back. And there are buyers who will step in. We also have provisions if someone kisses that bus or gets hurt or gets sick or any of the things that sort of the what ifs that are
Hmm.
out there. Right now, I would say we're mostly insulated from the loss of a key person, including me, and that's on purpose. I think we have enough depth and enough cross training and we have enough thoroughbreds in the stable to run without any one of us. Now, would we miss any of these individuals who are, of course,
Hmm.
but there is no role here that only one person has the magic button to run. And so my job was to make myself, initially I was trying to be indispensable. Then I was trying to be fully replaceable. And it's a unique experience to try and put yourself in a position where there is no secret sauce. There's nothing, it's not all up here.
Hmm.
We have the
The
systems and we
manuals, the
have the
processes.
technology and we have the workflows and we have the things that someone could step into my chair tomorrow. And we're about to find out. I mean, we're 4 weeks away as we record this. We're 4 weeks away from finding out how it runs. And I'm already having some experiences. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that, but some qualitative, some emotional, subjective experiences just by knowing sort of what's coming. I feel like there are a lot of lasts that are happening, the last this, the
Hmm.
last
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But it also paves the way for a lot of new firsts. And so rather than lamenting anything that I'm giving up, I'm allowing myself to be really enthusiastic about the things that I'm gaining, the time that I have to do the things that I'm really passionate about. So, but the lasts are there, and it is an emotional thing.
No, that's a very powerful insight that in order for you to have first, that in many cases you have to have last. But, we cheer the one and we're sad about the other, right? But it's two sides of the same coin. I want to explore that a bit. You're moving from a client facing role, or let's say primarily a client facing role, and something that's clearly energized you for well on 3 decades, to one focused on strategic growth and consulting. Now, I suspect that you're always going to be brought in on the big important cases or the clients where you have a very good, long lasting relationship, but it's still not your 80% of your day, for instance. So that is a step into the unknown. How did you think through that decision? And how are you managing this uncertainty of not knowing how exactly that will feel or turn out? Like, you're anticipating this is what you're going to feel, this is what your day is going to be like, but you don't know, right? You're putting your foot out there and you don't know whether there's solid ground underneath it. That's a tough decision to make. How did you make that?
Well, it's funny. I feel myself smirking because I just feel so silly about what I'm about to tell you. There was this thought that, well, first of all, nobody can do it as well as I can. Absolutely false. Then there was this thought, well, clients only want to talk to me and they're not going to work with somebody else. False. Turns out most of them don't like me that much anyway, and they're very happy to work with members of our team. The reality is, knowing that I'm still here, I think does give people some comfort, some peace. We as a firm, all of our advisors present every case that we're working on to the whole group, kind of like a teaching hospital. So they're still going to get my insights into various things. And if something goes really wrong, I'll be there. But most of this is I've gone from, and I'm going to use another sort of metaphor here. I've gone from being the waiter to being the maitre d'. Now I get to meet and greet, maybe take somebody to dinner occasionally and spend some time and catch up on life, but not do the day-to-day, here's your appetizer. And so it's been an interesting experience. I found that 100%, truly 100% of the families that I had worked with most closely are all still very much on this bus and a part of our team and working with other folks. And like I said, I don't think they miss me at all, which hurts a little. I'm not going to lie, but it's okay. And what I've found is that the things that I'm moving towards are so exciting that this is the first time I've had a new job since I was basically 22 years old.
Hmm.
I mean, I've been doing the same thing for over 30 years and doing it in different ways and with different people, but doing the same thing. And while I never want to not be a financial advisor and somebody people can turn to, I also recognize that to grow this organization means that we need a dedicated rainmaker. We need somebody who can go out and find opportunities. So to your point earlier, advisors don't have succession plans. I mean, it is crazy. I'll bet you there's more than 50% that have no plan at all. And the other half have maybe a break glass in case of emergency. They have somebody who, if they drop dead tomorrow, is going to take the practice over, but they don't have a succession plan. They don't have G2 or G3 advisors in their firm. They don't have infrastructure, workflows, legal documents. None of it's done. And they're either going to die at their desks, which some of them are planning on, and I presume that's all right, but they won't monetize their life's work. Or they're going to have something that won't outlive them. And when something happens to them, clients are going to suddenly be cast to the wind and have to find new places to go. And that's not what any of us would want for the families we've represented for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So I think it's really imperative for advisors, for their clients' sake, for their staff and coworkers and partners' sake, for their family's sake. I mean, let's face it, if all of a sudden we didn't have any planning done and I dropped dead, my wife would own the shares in the company. And while she's delightful, she is not a financial advisor and they don't want to be her partner and she doesn't want to be here. And it causes all kinds of problems. There's so many. We tell all of our clients to do buy-sell agreements. We tell them all to have estate planning documents and tax arrangements and to cross T's and dot I's. And then a lot of advisors don't do it themselves. We have the ability, and our firm is being built in such a way that we can help be a landing pad for some of those advisors who haven't built the succession plan want to try and monetize, don't necessarily want to quit and go sit on a beach, but want to be involved. And so I actually think on a small scale, we can be buyers rather than sellers. We're at roughly $1 billion, but there are firms out there, practices out there with 50 and 100 and 150 million that can't sell to private equity. They're too small for that. But they have a meaningful asset and people they care about and a career they're proud of. And it makes sense for us to help them find a solution, whether I'm doing that as a consultant and helping them find it in their own communities, or whether we're doing that as BFG and we're able to be part of their solution. I mean, there's so many different ways to play that. And I am hoping that we can avoid some of the conflicts of interest by being pretty much Switzerland here and say, you can engage us in any which way you'd like in that conversation. We're here to help.
You make some good, interesting points, Eric. I think that it is true. In my experience, I would say that perhaps it's denial, perhaps it's I'll get to it, I'm just too busy. But I think you're right. I think many advisors, for a variety of reasons, don't have a succession plan. I would say, at the risk of sounding controversial, many advisors are very good at what they do and enjoy it and add real value, but I would call it a lifestyle practice as opposed to a
Yes,
business. So they
absolutely.
do it because it suits their temperament, their lifestyle. But without, as you say, if all of the knowledge is up in your head, if all of the relationships are owned by you, if all of the know-how is owned by you, there is no business to buy. Your exit plan, for lack of, it's unfortunately, it paints a picture. Your exit plan is the day that you decide that you're done, whether because you dropped dead at your desk, or you've decided that you can't handle it anymore. You walk out the door, you turn off the lights, you lock the door, and you hand in the key. That's your exit plan, right? There is no, as you say, there is no residual value that you can capture out of the business. There is no transition for your existing client base, what have you. And I think,
Or your employees,
or
or
your
your employees
employees,
who are suddenly out of work.
correct.
Like that's
So you painting this picture, I think, is very important for the audience. And on that note, I want to explore this one related concept. When we talked before, you talked about the idea of moving from, call it the intelligence curve to the wisdom curve. In
yes.
other words, from being the technician, the technical expert, to being the sage. And I suspect that that is a big challenge for many advisors out there because it's a fundamental shift in identity and their value proposition and their own self definition of worth and everything else. How do you help advisors planning their succession navigate that psychological transition, not just the financial, but the psychological transition, especially when so much of their self worth has been tied to being the expert in that room?
It's a great question. And the first thing I have to do, Sam, is I have to give credit to the author that came up with that message because it wasn't mine. Arthur Brooks wrote a book called From Strength to Strength
Hmm.
that is absolutely brilliant. And the first thing I would tell any, not just advisors, because this could be for anyone, but anyone who is, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, trying to figure out what the next stage of life might look like, pick this book up because it does paint the picture of going from being the intelligence, the expert, to being more of the sage and the wisdom. But it has a trigger age in it, Sam, that is younger than I ever expected, and his trigger age is 35. 35. So the idea is that at 35, in most cases, you have learned from a technical standpoint, you have mastered your craft and learned what you're going to learn. That doesn't mean there isn't continuing education, but it means you've really done the heavy lifting of your education. And now you're trading that in for I've seen it before. I've helped people for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. You can't fake experience. You can't. You either have it or you don't. And so I absolutely think that teaming in our industry is really important. And that if we can have a really top educated 30-year-old advisor on top of his or her game, they know it inside out, they're experts and can build the perfect plan, paired with somebody who's been doing this 30 years, who has seen what really happens when you lose a loved one or when there's a job loss or when somebody's ready to retire. What does it really feel like? What really happens? Not what's in the textbook, because that's not how it works. And that combination is so important. So I'm embracing the fact that I get called in when there's some wisdom needed, some gray hair needed. I think cultures around the world have always given the seniors, the elders, the biggest tent, and they go to the elders with the biggest challenge or the biggest problem, or you've seen this 80 years ago. And in our country, we tend to put older people out to pasture like they're no longer useful. And that's tragic. And the older I get, the less interested I am in being put out to pasture. So I think finding a better way is saying, well, instead of expecting this person to be at the top of their game academically, they're not going to be.
Hmm.
Instead, have them channel all of the experiences that they've had, good, bad, and sideways, and bring that to the table with somebody at the top of their game academically, and you suddenly have a really solid combination. And I'm going to throw one more thing at you, Sam, and that is that most of our businesses are made better by virtue of working with multiple generations of client families. And that means representing the kids and grandkids of the people we've been working with, and to help make a difference generationally. And there's lots of reasons for that. But these kids do not want their mom and dad's advisor. They don't. They might hire the firm, but they don't want the advisor. They want their own relationship. They want somebody closer in age to them. And quite frankly, advisors should be younger than their clients. In the same way, doctors should be younger than their patients.
Well,
You
you'd
want
want
that
your
doctor to be
executor
around.
you'd
You
want your
want them
executor
around.
to be younger than you are. I mean, I think it makes total sense,
Correct.
right?
So if I'm in my fees and a client is in their 70s, that's fine. But if they then have a 45-year-old kid and a 20-year-old grandkid, they're not best suited working with me. They're best suited working with the next generation of advisors, building their own relationship, having their own private conversations that don't involve mom and dad, that doesn't the history to bring to the table. And we can talk about relationships and what's important and values, but they don't want to hire. I wouldn't hire any of my father's advisors for anything. That just doesn't make sense.
Well, look, I think it's not just about alignment of interests, alignment of values, and everything else. I mean, this is just an independent streak, isn't it? I mean, whether you're the second generation or third generation, you may be very grateful to all that your family's provided. You may be very, very respectful of the values and the heritage. It doesn't mean that you want to be tarred with the same brush as what your grandfather or whatever has
True.
been done, right? I mean that.
100%. 100%.
So, Eric, you've now completed 2 acquisitions and you have a third in the works, including opening a second office with a 63-year-old advisor who has told you that he wants to be out in 2 years.
Hmm.
What's your approach to identifying the right types of practices to acquire? And how are you assessing whether someone is truly ready for that transition or just hoping they are, versus just hoping they are? It's the items that we just talked about, the psychological, the cultural.
Well, I think before we can talk about what we're planning, we have to talk about what we've done, because we've learned some lessons, good and bad, from the acquisitions we've done. The first acquisition we did, which was almost 10 years ago, was an out-of-state acquisition. And the senior principal of the firm moved actually to Maryland and joined us and became part of the executive team and became part of the organization, a shareholder. And it was designed almost like a merger where we were the larger of the two parties. And there were pros and cons to that. The pros were we had another advisor within the fold, so we had capacity. The cons were this is someone who had done it their own way for 30 years. And we needed our team, our staff, they all had to do it the same way. So there was a steep learning curve.
Mhm.
There was also no provision for exit other than when the time comes, it would be just like for the rest of us as
Right,
shareholders.
right.
And so when she decided to retire, it created an enormous financial transaction for the shareholders, myself included, because we had to monetize that at a time where maybe it was a little bit before we expected to. So we learned from this, and we had to use a third party, and we used a bank, and we had to do financing, and she rode off in the sunset. The clients are happy. They're with us. It's been successful, but it was painful.
Mhm.
It'll be less painful in July of 2028 when I've written my last check, by the way. But the second one was we added a senior advisor who was going to leave her firm and come work with us and did not have the ability to bring clients with her. She couldn't solicit. So when we did that deal, she came, we built LinkedIn profiles and did lots of PR and lots of media, and $100 million followed her in the first 12 months.
Wow.
And so we baked in the deal where, her representative of recurring revenue would generate how many shares of stock she wound up with. And so we built that deal, and she wound up with a smaller piece of a larger pie, and it worked great. And she's my successor now. So Lena will be our CEO January 1st. It's been a total home run. This current deal is in North Carolina, where I think it's really important for us to set up a shop. So we actually have leased some space and are in a position to be starting a shop. This is a G1 advisor, Generation 1 advisor. He's 63. He has a G2 advisor. That's the good news, who's terrific, who we can't wait to work with. But his G2 advisor has no appetite for the risk of buying the business and is not somebody who was going to buy it from him. He had no succession plan, even though he did have somebody
as a
helping take care of
successor.
clients. It wasn't a succession plan. So we've been able to structure a deal where there's a tremendous incentive for the first 2 years for this G1 advisor to migrate clients to us. He does have the ability to do that because he does own the book, but it is a positive consent. Clients have to proactively say, yes, we're with you, we're following, and we're comfortable with this transaction and transition. So he's incented to do that. We bought the right to that client base and provided him with shares of stock that he is selling in tranches over the next 5 years. So the deal worked out better for us financially in that we have a known amount that we're paying for it. But we've also taken some risk on here, Sam. We've taken the risk on that he can be successful and that we can be successful in not only attracting these clients of his to stay with us, but then to retain them beyond his working years, which could be as soon as 2 years. He may want to stay on as a consultant. He may want to stay on in various ways, but he's also got some other plans. He's empty nested and remarried, and we all have our own goals. We all have our own desires. So
They change over time as well, right? So
they do. They do. So I think what we've done here is we've created a win for everyone. I think the G2 advisor wins huge because he's going to get infrastructure support and be a better advisor than he's ever been. I think the G1 advisor has now a buyer for his practice. He's been able to monetize. He knows what's coming, and he's incented to make it more successful. He can make more money if we do better with the deal, which is great for him. It's terrific for some of our advisors who are going to be taking on some of these clients and are actually now having an opportunity to broaden their books, their own clientele. So there's enthusiasm there. It's good for our investment committee and our client service area to have people who can be involved. We've hired a client relations person to help be the concierge to those clients. And I think everybody's going to win as long as each person does what they say they're going to do. And you'll have to check back with me in 2 years. I'll say it was fantastic, or, oh my gosh, we're glad that's over. But I think it's going to be fantastic because we know the people.
well, and I
And
think
these are
what's
good people.
important that you put in here is that there's the learnings that go on, right? I mean, it's interesting that you talk about this third deal over 10 years and things that you learned in the first deal and the second deal that you're incorporating into the third deal. It's not cookie cutter. You're not getting a
No.
template, but I think you're surfacing issues or ideas or factors that you need to take into account. And I think there's what I like about what you're talking about is that you've positioned yourself for success, but you're not blinded by ego or certainty that you're going to say, okay, it's a slam dunk, right? You have to work towards it, but you put in all the pieces necessary to bring that success.
We have the people, the technology, the systems, the workflows. We have everything ready to go, but now we have to execute. And by we, the current BFG team has to execute, and the newly incoming BFG
Right.
team has to
Right.
execute. And if everybody does, we're all going to win and high five in the hallway again, which is so important to us. And if we whiff, I consider the financial risk here to be manageable enough that if the whole thing, just craters, we're going to be okay. Obviously, it's not ideal, but we'll be okay. I don't think we haven't staked our reputation there. We haven't staked
It's not a
our,
bet the
we have not,
farm type of deal
no,
that
and
you're
we
making.
haven't borrowed money. We haven't borrowed money. The biggest expense that we have is essentially buying out the equity, which the equity will be less expensive if it's not successful. So there's that. And signing a lease, but we only signed a 3-year lease because we don't know how it's going to go. I didn't sign a 10-year lease down there. We signed a 3-year lease. We're the smallest tenant in a building where the landlord probably already hates us, except that we'll take care of it. But we took on very manageable risks, understanding that there is a spectrum of outcomes from negative 100%, where this whole
Right.
thing is a loss,
Right.
to 2 to 3x, which is really possible based on the infrastructure that we bring to the table. They had no infrastructure. They had no systems. They had no transparency. They had no consistency of fees or of services or of outcomes or of, I mean, it's because these small lifestyle practices, and I say that again lovingly,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with having a lifestyle practice. You can make
Right.
a great living and take great care of people, but they didn't build a business. They had a practice. And now this becomes part of a business. And I know our G2 is super excited and he's going to be great. We're going to love working with him.
Look, I love that. I think there's so much great insight that you're providing for listeners here, Eric, about the lessons on how to think about these kind of succession planning and acquisitions. You've mapped out different scenarios. You're not going in with rose-colored glasses thinking this is going to be a grand slam. You're looking at all of the different possible scenarios because you
Mm-hmm.
don't control all the factors, and you've, as you say, you've done the deal. It's a size of deal that you can handle any outcome possible. So if it is
Yes,
a complete whiff, as we said in the past, I mean, if it's a complete whiff and you lose all the money that you put into it, it's not an ideal outcome, but it's not going to break
that's right.
VFG.
Correct.
So you've anticipated that outcome, you prepared for it 2 or 3 times your investment. That's an option. That's a possible scenario. You've planned for that and how to maximize the likelihood of achieving it. And I think that's a really, really important message for the listeners, that you're going in with your eyes wide open and not taking on more risk than you can manage, and recognizing that things aren't always in your control.
That's right.
Eric, in your book and podcast, you challenge the idea that retirement means disappearing to a beach. And you clearly are not doing it. And you're not retiring, you're just taking on a different role. Many advisors and their clients struggle to define what comes next. And look, for me, that's understandable. Like when we spend 40 plus years working, 30, 40 plus years working 40 plus hours a week, it's pretty hard to kind of pack it in on a Friday and then Monday you're trying to figure out what's next. How do you help people, whether it's clients or advisors or anyone that you're dealing with, move from I know what I'm leaving to I know what I'm building towards?
Well, the first thing is you have to start early. You have to really be thinking about this long before you ever consider 2 weeks' notice. The people who want to retire and disappear are the people who mostly hate their jobs. It's a very sad group, and they're there. I mean, the people who have stomach aches every Sunday night because they have to go to work the next day, the people who live for Friday at 5, that is to me, a very sad existence. And so I'm more speaking to the people who like what they're doing and are just trying to figure out what's next. Okay. And I think retirement in its current form is something done to you, not for you, and certainly not with you. And it's dreadful.
I love
I
that.
mean, well, we stole the King's English from the UK, right? So we can't take credit for our own language. But in the UK, to retire is to go to sleep. Think about it. It's almost like you're done. If I see somebody on LinkedIn whose profile just says retired, it might as well say deceased, because I'm not going to click it and go, there's somebody dynamic who I've got to get to know. We are more than what we do. And it's a very American thing. I've found this I found it in Australia too, actually, but
In
it's a very
Canada as well.
American thing
Yeah.
where we identify who we are,
By our job title.
what we do. And when somebody says, Sam, tell me about yourself, the first thing people say is, I'm an architect, I'm an engineer, I'm an accountant. Well, no, you're lots of things. You're a father and a husband and a hockey fan and a nature lover and an athlete. And you're lots of things. You're not just what you do all day. And if you are just what you do all day, the absence of that is the absence of self. And that's very sad. So I think it's more important to look at retirement as the absence of needing to work, not the absence of work itself. If you are financially independent and you've gotten to a point where work is truly optional, as far as I'm concerned, you're retired. By definition, you don't have to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Should you sit home and watch daytime TV until you die in your chair? No, I don't think you should. I think there's lots of things to do. I think we should be leveling up in our lives and finding new things, but you can't just start that on a Monday, to your point. yes, you can start volunteering someplace, but to really define what you want your next chapter of life to look like, takes some thought, some introspection. Maybe it takes a sounding board. Maybe it takes some sessions with your executive dialogue or your coworkers or certainly your spouse.
100%.
My wife doesn't want me puttering around the house all day. She
My wife
would,
has made that clear to me.
oh, like you don't have to, you don't have to work for the rest of your life, but you are not going to stay here. That kind of thing. We have to figure out what we want to, not what we want to do, but
What
what
we
we
want to
want to
be.
be when we grow up.
Look, I think that's so powerful, Eric. I think you're absolutely 100% right. I think we've mistaken, because of the socialization that we've lived with, working isn't equivalent to getting a paycheck. Early in our careers, for all of us, it is a paycheck. Whether you're self-employed or whether you work for somebody else, we're working for a paycheck to pay the bills, to put food on the table. There comes a point in time where, as you say, for most of us, that you don't have to earn a paycheck in order to live, whether that comes at retirement, before retirement, what have you. I think, to your point, there's a big difference between saying, okay, I'm going to go golfing 6 days a week for the next 20, 30 years of my life, which I challenge anybody to do, no matter how appealing that might sound, to saying, you know what, I don't have to go to work. I don't have to earn a paycheck, but I'm going to do this because I want to. I'm going to do this because I feel like I can give back, or I want to do this. I need to do something that is going to keep me mentally engaged, emotionally engaged, socially engaged, physically engaged, all of that. And I think the irony for me, and I'd love your take on this. The irony for me is that we spend so much time, the good people, right? Like the people that are ahead of the game in terms of getting their financial plans in order, working with advisors, get their retirement planning. They've been doing it 15, 20, 30 years, but that's the financial side of things. They don't spend any of time on the non-financial, the emotional, what are you going to fill your calendar with for those 40 hours a week that you're no longer being paid for? And I think part of the challenge is that we're only slowly starting to talk about it. I think the challenge is that we've been brainwashed into thinking that retirement, our entire life, we've been working towards this retirement, this magic retirement day, when that's when life starts. So the idea that it comes and you're not happy and that you're not ready,
Yeah.
you can't talk about it because you sit there and think, God, there's something wrong with me. When the reality is, it's not you. Everybody is suffering from this, but nobody's talking about it because this was supposed to be the nirvana that we were all going for,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes. Well, my take is you're right. We spend all of these years becoming experts at something, building a vitae, building a resume, building a network, building this community, to then what? Quit and give it all up? Why not find other ways to leverage all
Right.
those
Right.
relationships for good? And if you don't need the money, it can be in a cause that means something to you. It doesn't have to be a job. It could be consulting, it could be part-time work. You can
Teaching.
certainly make time for golf and for grandkids and other things. But for anyone who wonders how they would do with this, I challenge people to do two things. One is take 3 months off. Now, I know that's not easy if you're punching a clock for somebody else, but if you're in a position where you could, take 3 months off, and I mean really off.
Hmm.
No emails, no phone calls. You're off. It's a sabbatical. And see how happy you. For a week, it's going to be terrific. And then you're going to be climbing the walls, wondering what's going on and wanting to do things. Truly. And the second thing is, if you think your business is ready for succession, do the same thing in your business. Take 3 months off, let it run completely without you. And if you don't feel confident doing that, you're not ready for succession. You don't have the right people. We need to be able to disappear and know that nothing will go wrong. The world's not perfect, but everything will be handled in the same type of way as it would have had you been there. And that exercise, and it's 3 months, not 3 years.
Yeah.
See
I
how you
love
do.
that. I think those are great experiments to run on the personal and the professional level. And admittedly, as you say, not everyone can do it, but you should work yourself to that point. It's a nice stepping stone before you take the plunge, right? To kind of sit there and say, is this going to work the way that I want to? But I love it, Eric.
Sam, I work so much and I enjoy it so much that I get bored on a long weekend. I don't know what in the hell I would do. I really don't. Like and I don't work the long days like I used to.
Right.
When I was 25, I would work 7 in the
Yep.
morning till 10 at night. Now I'm done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon most days, and it's great. I work every day. A lot of times I'm Saturdays and Sundays, I'm getting stuff done, but I'm done at lunchtime.
Right. Look,
And
I
it
think
allows me to manage my energy.
I think to your point, it's a learning that many people have. I had it. I had this ridiculous dream or idea when I was in college that look, my whole life ambition was to make as much money as I can and retire at the as early as I can. And I don't know. My idea of retirement at this stage is nothing like what I thought it was going to be at 25. I like my holidays. I do different things. I enjoy it, but enjoy it knowing that 2 weeks afterwards, I'm going back into structure and routine. And to your point, what I want to spend my time doing is different than what I thought I wanted when I was 25. But it's sure as heck is not kind of doing nothing. Yeah, I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy these kind of conversations. I enjoy writing. And so to my refined definition of retirement, it is I will keep busy, but finding different things to do that interest me at that time period. So I suspect that I hope that I keep growing as a person so that what I
Yes.
will be interested in doing 5 years from now is different, but it will never come to the point where I'm going to be lying on a couch watching daytime television all day long, as you said.
Well, no, and it's funny you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say 10 years from now, in a perfect world, you'll be a different iteration of yourself. There'll be a metamorphosis of some type, not because you're broken or need fixing, but because you're evolving and you're growing and you're experiencing things. And what interests you today may not in 5
Right.
years or 10 years, and that's okay.
Right.
You get to find all new things. And that
100%.
doesn't mean necessarily that you have to take up skydiving. It just means that you find other ways to spend your time and other things to do that create purpose.
And by the way, we've all done that, right? Like, I mean, there is, without getting too philosophical, when you're 20s, you don't have a family, you don't have community, you don't have kids, etc. And for many of us, we evolve through those periods, and we become parents, we become spouses, we become community elders, etc. These are roles that we didn't have, but we grow into. We Most of us enjoy at least parts of that, right? If not everything else. And we kind of
Yeah.
evolve
Yes.
to the next one, whatever that next role is going to be, like grandparent or what have you. Eric, we're coming to the end of our podcast. So I have a few final rapid fire questions for you.
Bring it on.
Number one, professionally, what is the most important lesson you've learned over the years?
The most important lesson I've learned over the years is to surround myself with people smarter than me who like to do things and are good at things that I'm not, and give them the tools they need to succeed and get out of their way. It's just to not be threatened by the folks you surround yourself with and to let them achieve greatness is such a thrill. And so, yeah, play to your strengths, not your weaknesses, and surround yourself with people who love to do the things that you don't love to do, and you'll never have to do them again.
It's a very powerful lesson, and I couldn't agree with you more. It required, for me, it took a time and experience to learn it, and you have to kind of surrender the ego a little bit, right? But
A lot bit.
it's yeah,
Yes, a lot bit.
it's a
Yeah.
very important lesson, though. Number two, what is one practical tip you would offer listeners that are keen on implying your insights?
Well, without sounding self-serving and to say contact me, which I would love, I would say don't wait. I think it's really for advisors, for business owners, for people in general. We tend to put ourselves last. We tend to do our
Mhm.
own planning last. We take better care of our clients or customers or other people than we do ourselves and our own family. And so I would say make your own planning, whether it's financial or psychological or social or familial, make your own planning a priority and create communication within your family or within your tribe, whatever that looks like, for you. And don't wait. It will not get easier if you wait.
That's a great message. And as you're talking, what it reminds me of is when you're on an airplane and they're always making the safety announcements when the oxygen mask comes, put yours
Yes,
on first before you look after your loved ones. And the idea is not about being selfish, but it's a very real recognition that if you're not in a good shape, you can't be of any help to others. And I think perhaps that's the message you're getting across as well, that get your planning in order so that you can be your best self for your clients and others that matter to you. So,
absolutely. I mean, we have to take care of ourselves too. I mean, we have to be taken care of physically. We have to have the right nutrition and energy and take care of our mental health and all the things so that we can be great for the people who rely on us.
Eric, this has been a really fun and very enjoyable conversation. First of all, I want to I wish you good luck for the next
Thank
4
you.
weeks on your transition.
Thank you.
And if listeners want to learn more about you or find out about your work, where should they go?
To learn more about the consulting work that I'm doing, go to brotmanconsultinggroup.com.
Mhm.
And to learn more about the financial advising that we're doing, go to BFG.
Awesome. Eric, it's been a fun discussion. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Uncertainty Edge.
Sam, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
In this episode of the Uncertainty Edge podcast, I spoke with Eric Brotman, founder and outgoing CEO of BFG Financial Advisors, about what it really takes to plan a successful succession and why most advisors are getting it dangerously wrong. Here are my 3 key takeaways. Number 1, start selling before you're ready to stop. Eric began selling equity internally in his 30s, when many of his peers thought he was out of his mind. His insight? If you wait until your practice is at full value, the only buyers left are private equity firms. And that's rarely the best outcome for your team, your clients, or your legacy. Like a watermelon left too long on the vine, a practice with no buyers lined up will eventually rot. Building a bench of internal shareholders early creates alignment, culture, and a business that can outlive you. Number 2, from technician to sage, the identity shift no one prepares you for. Drawing on Arthur Brooks's book, From Strength to Strength, Eric highlighted that the skills that make you exceptional in the first half of your career, technical mastery, expert knowledge, analytical horsepower, are different from what creates value in the second half. The transition from being the expert in the room to being the wise voice in the room is not a demotion, it's an evolution. Advisors who resist this shift risk holding back both themselves and the next generation of talent around them. Number 3, retirement is the absence of needing to work, not the absence of work itself. Eric challenges the conventional retirement narrative head on. The advisors and clients who struggle most in retirement are those who define themselves entirely by their role. True financial independence means work becomes a choice, not an obligation, and the freedom should open doors, not close them. Whether it's consulting, mentoring, or pursuing a new purpose, the goal isn't to disappear, it's to graduate. Eric reminds us that the best succession plans aren't just financial documents. They're deeply personal blueprints for what comes next. Advisors who plan with that clarity and help the clients do the same are the ones who will leave a legacy that truly lasts. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Uncertainty Edge. If today's conversation sparked something, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You'll get practical tools, deeper insights, and new episodes every other Tuesday. Please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter at theuncertaintyedge.com.